Hey everybody, it's Party Elite with another quest battle for you today, this time the Sword of Torgald as Wulfrik the Wanderer. Now this is early content for Norsca, and I thought I'd get it out to you just before Norsca does release for everybody. So again, this is played on Legendary difficulty from the quest battle menu, so it's the preset army, a little bit more challenging than a custom army I would say, but very great quest battle. I really enjoyed playing this one, a lot of surprises, so get ready for some pretty intense Norscan action. The Dark Gods have sent Wulfrik the Wanderer visions, compelling him to travel deep into the Bretonnian heartland to duel a famous hero who is as yet unknown to him. To draw out his mysterious adversary, Wulfrik must attack the site of a keep said to contain important holy relics and stately heirlooms of the Bretonnian kingdom. The first thing to do is to slaughter the pathetic rabble they have sent to defend it, then maybe this so-called champion will make an appearance.
Tribesmen, again it is time to soak our blades in the blood of weak southerners, pompous and proud, yet they don't even give me the courtesy of a worthy fight. I come here seeking champions, but look, they send peasants. Their cowardly lords don't deserve their riches, so we shall kill them and take all that we see. Then the rest of Bretonia. My masters will receive these offerings by my sword! Kill at will!
Alright, after that rather rousing speech, let's take a look at what Wulfrik has brought to bear. So let's start with my sort of central position here. I do have a front line of Marauder champions, 4 units right across the front. Right behind them, I do have these Famir warriors with great weapons, and behind them, I've got the Marauder hunters with javelins, 2 units. On either flank as well, I do have these Marauder Spearmen, and you'll notice that most of my anti-large is at the back on either flank, and that's because I don't know where enemy cavalry is coming from. They aren't involved in the initial Bretonnian deployment, so I need to keep these guys in reserve. In front of these Marauder Spearmen on either side, I do have these Marauder Berserkers, and the hope here is that if there is a head-on frontline engagement, I can send these guys in for some flanking maneuvers or rear charges. Then, I do have further out on either flank these Marauder Horsemen with their throwing axes, again with their armor-piercing missiles. I'm hoping to screen any cavalry or any enemy units that might come in from the flanks, while I do also have Wulfrik the Wanderer all the way back here, a little isolated, just so that I can send him wherever necessary depending on how Bretonnia does deploy and where reinforcements come from. And then finally, the 2 units of Norscan Warhounds up front here, able to push forward and get involved right away from the get-go, as it were. And meanwhile, Bretonnia does have a literal peasant army here. It's mostly peasant mob. I think it's 10 units of peasant mob and 3 units of spearmen at arms with shields. We also have a Grail Reliquae, and in charge is Hélène Mercier, a spellcaster, except without any spells, atop a horse. So, very pitiful army that Bretonnia has sent to start things off with. So I decide to get a little aggressive. I do push forward from right from the start, need to be aggressive, and I try to get up to this ridge. I don't want to be caught out in that ditch over there, but I do send these Norscan Warhounds up nice and early because I want to get them involved right away. If I can get them into the peasant rabble, the mob as it were, and get some early damage done, there's nothing like it. So I send these guys up front, send them through the ditch, and as I make my rather frightening approach, these guys step back, and rightfully so. The Norscan Warhounds have very unattractive faces, so I can imagine wanting to pull away from them. And so I continue my aggression as the rest of my army does pull up to this ridge and halt there. You'll see the Norscan Warhounds, they do push in. I do have to be careful though, because there are these spearmen here, so I dive in really quickly, get a little bit of damage done, as you can see, just capture as many of these troops as possible, hurt as many of the peasant mob as possible, spread wide and thin, get these guys in from the side as well, just to spread that damage. But very quickly I actually start to take a decent amount of hurt, so I do pull back, especially damage to morale. There are a lot of Bretonnians there, so just by sheer force of numbers I do have to pull back, and these reinforcements do arrive. Poachers from the forest arrive to protect these Bretonnian peasants, and so I pull out the Norscan Warhounds here and I decide to send them in after those peasant bowmen. They do have fire arrows, so they are pretty dangerous. They do cause fire damage where it might cause some trouble, so I do need to take care of these guys, and I do so right away. I want to make sure that range support isn't able to push in and actually cause any damage to my troops. So you'll see these Norscan Warhounds go through the trees, trying to spot and see exactly what reinforcements have arrived, because I only caught a glimpse of them before they went hidden. And I do split up. You can see these guys pulled down here, so I send these Norscan Warhounds down here as well to intercept and take care of these guys so they can't run away freely, while these Norscan Warhounds up here push in to try and take care of these 3 units. Now, seeing that it's a pretty uneven split here. I do get my Marauder Horsemen with their throwing axes involved as well. In just a moment, you'll see I send them in for melee engagements, actually, just so that they can close the gap and get that morale damage in and take care of the situation as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, the frontline engagements are about to begin. I send in through the ditch and push up because these guys did retreat. They're not able to actually get a clean downhill charge on me, though they still get a bit of one. And you'll see that I actually send my Marauder champions in to engage. I send them through the gaps of the Fimir warriors because they're a little bit faster. They got there earlier. But sending these Marauder champions in to try and block this peasant mob advance on all sides. I've also got these Marauder berserkers pushing in from the sides. I want to shut down this peasant aggression, and I need to keep my Fimir warriors with great weapons and my spearmen free because, again, I'm not sure where cavalry is coming from. It wasn't that first batch of reinforcements that is being taken care of pretty quickly, but a second batch of reinforcements have arrived now as well, and yet again, there are no cavalry there. So I'm still not sure where the cavalry is going to come in from, and while you can see there are some men-at-arms with pole arms and some men-at-arms with shields there, I didn't actually notice that there are also a couple of units of field trebuchet coming in, so I hadn't noticed those guys, so I didn't pay them much attention. And in the center here, the battle does rage on while everything is focused here. I'm not sending anything to take care of that aggression from that left flank. You'll notice here the Great Reliquate does push in to provide some morale support, but that's not going to be enough with all of this damage coming through. You'll see over here as well, the peasant mob are about to give up in the center here. These Marauder champions are getting a lot of hurt down. They're not even raging yet. Meanwhile, on the right over here, the Marauder berserkers, and even on the left, the Marauder berserkers are kicking into berserk mode, getting a decent amount of damage taken care of either flank, while again, off to the right, the peasant bowmen are largely taken care of. I've already got a shatter over here. I think another unit was shattered off the field. These Marauder horsemen once again chasing these guys into melee just to shut them down quickly and not waste any ammunition, while these warhounds again taking care of those peasant bowmen all the way over there. Meanwhile, first shots from the trebuchet actually land into my Marauder spearmen over here, as you can see, causing a little bit of damage here, and that noise of the rocks breaking and exploding on the ground is what alerts me to the field trebuchet. So at that point, I turn these Marauder horsemen over here to try and take care of the field trebuchet. Notice this giant clump that's advanced now. It actually grew in size ever since I went there, and then another group of reinforcements does arrive. We do have another sort of Bretonnian lord arriving, and I guess that's the champion that they were talking about in the introduction. We do have some cavalry arriving on the field as well, and so at this point, while I was sending my Marauder horsemen with throwing axes to come in, get some damage in, maybe charge into the trebuchet and pull away, at this point, I definitely have to think better of that decision. So while the front is definitely, or rather the central engagement is going in my favor and that right flank has been taken care of, I'm bringing these Norscan warhounds over here, and I'm going to use the Marauder horsemen over here as sort of a baiting maneuver. As you can see, I'm pulling them off to the side now so that all of these guys are going to chase these guys down and try and engage these Marauder horsemen and leave the trebuchet isolated so that my Norscan warhounds can actually continue pushing on that way and shut down the field trebuchet. Meanwhile, the front line over here, you'll see, still not committing all my troops to an engagement. I finally noticed the cavalry coming down, so I send all these Marauder spearmen off to the side. The Fimir warriors as well with their great weapons. They are anti-large, so sending them off to the side. The javelin throwers, as well as these two units of Marauder spearmen. Meanwhile, the Norscan warhounds poke out of the trees here and decide to get a nice charge into the right flank over here. Again, just trying to get some damage done, take care of the peasant mob. They're so low on morale. I just want to get this charge in and take care of that flank once and for all so I can push further and free up some of my units for these more, mid-tier and high-tier units that are coming down the hill here. So again, I absolutely love this this map, and I think this quest battle is pretty epic because of how the reinforcements arrive from various destinations, and there's sort of a story to them. So it's a really really interesting quest battle. But you'll see again over here these Marauder horsemen, I've just put them into skirmish mode. I want them to be chased by this entire contingent, and that's exactly what's happening, freeing once again these Norscan warhounds to push forward. You'll see though I do try to be a little bit more careful here as Guillaume here, Monsieur Guillaume, dives into my spearmen and does very quick work on them, terrifies them right off. But you'll see my Fimir warrior are right there. They're going to dive in on Monsieur Guillaume here and get a decent amount of damage done. I've got the Marauder spearmen pushing down here as well. I've got this unit of Fimir warriors with their great weapons as well. So a lot of anti-large now pushing in, and I can actually shut him down, get a decent amount of work done. And you'll see actually I've got Wulfrik the Wanderer pushing down this way as well. Now I've finally got a sort of competent melee combatant on the field, so if I can get Wulfrik in here and get a decent amount of damage done, then I can get this guy off the field ASAP. But you'll see we do have some Knights Errant here who have some different plans for my anti-large sort of range units over here, pushing in, trying to get a charge in. I do have some Fimir warriors with great weapons nearby, but that's a very dangerous situation. I do spot that, so I try to separate these javelin throwers apart just to make sure that one charge isn't going to shut everybody down. And you can see as these Fimir warriors with great weapons dive in to get some damage done, the trebuchet are coming in as well, getting a decent amount of hurt onto these Marauder spearmen. while I'm still waiting for that anti-large reinforcement to arrive. Meanwhile, over here, all of these Bretonnian units finally decided to dive in and engage. You can see the left and right flanks both have been strengthened a little bit, while my Norscan Warhounds came in for that rear charge or side charge to scare these peasant mob off. They weren't entirely able to scare them off, so the Spearmen armed with shields are able to dive in and provide some support now. But of course, the Marauder Berserkers going berserk are getting a lot of assistance from that, from being berserk, and of course Frenzy as well. But these Marauder champions over here sort of standing still, not doing anything. Once again, looking pretty. I need to push them in, so a little bit of an oversight there. But meanwhile, all the way off to the side over here, I do have these Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes, just hoping to, once again, just keep baiting these guys off to the side so that these Norscan Warhounds can finish closing that gap and take care of the field trebuchet. So you can see that sort of baiting maneuver worked out quite well. These Norscan Warhounds are completely uncontested, able to push in and shut that trebuchet down, while over here, Monsieur Guillaume is basically completely taken care of as these Knights Errant do push in to try and take care of my Marauder Spearmen. Meanwhile, you'll see the Marauder Hunters with their javelins get charged into as well, so I turn these Fimir Warriors with great weapons around to try and shut that down, while unfortunately Wulfrik the Wanderer is interrupted. He was about to get Hunter of Champions on Guillaume here, but unfortunately gets shut down, so not able to cast that. And meanwhile, in the front line, the battling does continue, overall in favor for myself. Of course, I have Marauder Champions and Berserkers going up against some filthy peasants, so not a big deal there. But off to the side over here, the Green Knight, along with some Grail Knights, do arrive through the forest, and I don't actually realize the situation there. I didn't notice the Green Knight come in. I didn't notice his cavalry contingent off to my right flank. I was too busy sort of micromanaging the scenario over here as some of my units here are beginning to rout, and some of these guys are getting terrified off the field. You'll notice, though, that despite that, I do force a bit of a retreat here. It's not a rout, but he is forced to pull back and take to the air because of the amount of damage the Fimir Warriors with their great weapons were able to do, about down to half health there. So very valuable, those units, and you can see Wulfrik wasn't actually able to get involved in any manner, and unfortunately these Knights Errant now as well, continuing to work on these Marauder Hunters, pushing in with their charges. I do have these Spearmen here to absorb those charges, though, and start doing a decent amount of work as well, while you'll see Guillaume here decides to dive in to these Fimir Warriors with great weapons. So that was a terrible call, fully surrounded now by these anti-large armor-sundering units, so I'm able to get a lot of work done, and while Wulfrik there is taking a moment, just once again standing there looking pretty, not doing anything, I noticed that this this foolish Bretonnian lord did decide to dive in, so I begin to, well, send Wulfrik in and take care of the situation. You notice Hunter of Champions does go down. Unfortunately, Wulfrik does get separated from the engagement, so he's not able to hunt that champion on his own, but the Fimir Warrior with their great weapons, supported by these Marauder Spearmen who are coming in from a rear charge, get to do a lot of work, and very quickly that Bretonnian Lord does fall apart, and he is routing now. So I'm very happy with the situation there, very quickly taken care of, and all of these Knights Errant as well falling apart to the sheer force of these Fimir Warriors with great weapons and the Marauder Spearmen. And you'll see the Marauder Spearmen who weren't charged from the side or charged from the rear or hit by trebuchet are actually still very much alive. Unfortunately, back here you'll see these Knights of the Realm do push into these Fimir Warriors with great weapons, so they will be pretty quickly taken care of, while Wulfrik actually does get pulled back here because I need his support now all the way back here. I think I finally noticed the Green Knight back there, as well as the Grail Knights pushing in for a nice rear charge into my Marauder Champions, who decided to get involved after a little while. But with that charge coming in, I decided that it's time for Seafang to make an appearance on the battlefield, and it's not the most ideal of places to cast it, but despite that, I do get a handful of kills, a decent amount of work done, and it's mainly about breaking that central engagement and getting whatever damage I can in. There aren't any straight lines currently, so I get maybe 20 or 17 or 20 kills, but the morale damage is really what I'm hoping for here. I really want these guys to break so that I can focus my damage per second on some of these more threatening units. So despite the lackluster show of Seafang, it does a lot for me tactically speaking. Meanwhile, up there you'll see the Norscan Warhounds are able to take care of both units of Field Trebuchet, shut them down once and for all, while back here these Marauder Horsemen with their throwing axes continue to be chased off by, well, quite foolishly by this infantry contingent, and rather, I don't know if I should call it courageously, by these Knights Errant, because of course as they're chasing down these Marauder Horsemen, they are getting pelted constantly by, throwing axes or javelins or whatever it might be. So yeah, let's call it some bravery. So they're trying to shut these guys down, but unfortunately I'm a little bit faster. Meanwhile, you'll see Wulfrik is pushing in now once again just to get involved, while the Green Knight is coming in once more, to get involved and save Bretonnia, I suppose, but you'll see I do have my Marauder Champions and Marauder Berserkers here just to absorb that charge and at least try and hold him in place while I can organize a response to the Green Knight. He is pretty threatening, so I do need to be very careful about how I approach him. Meanwhile, over here you'll see we do have these various Knights Errant trying to shut down my left flank, but I've got a lot of anti-large there, so it's not really much of a problem. Monsieur Guillaume, though, does decide to come back into the fray, but he's very low on health, so I'm not too concerned, while these Norscan Warhounds now, again, after having taken care of those 2 units of Field Trebuchet, able to return to the central engagement and then potentially force some routes over here, while Wulfrik just staring into combat again. A little poorly managed there, I have to say. Looking pretty, as it were. That's the 3rd time in this battle, so a little poor micromanagement there. But you'll see over here a full surround by these Femur Warriors with great weapons, and a Bretonnian Lord does not stand a chance. So that's really good to see in the actual field of battle. Some Femur Warriors do a lot of work, and it obviously helps that I had a lot of anti-large on that left flank, able to respond quite cleanly. Meanwhile, over here, Hélène Mercier does have to stay careful because Wulfrik has his eyes on her, going to completely ruin her day, chasing after her, while over here we do have the Grail Knights, I guess, retreating to get another charge in. I think they're trying to get a cycle charge in, and the Green Knight actually able to circumvent my little blockading force there and push in to, I think, these Marauder Champions with his tremendous amount of damage. So that's a very unfortunate situation for myself, while Wulfrik is chasing after Hélène Mercier once again. But this rear charge here, trying to shatter my Marauder Champions, the Green Knight diverts himself and pushes himself, I think, not sure what he wants to engage, but he does ultimately get into this massive clump here. But I do have my Femur Warriors with great weapons now in position to respond. I was quickly looking for what I have that causes magical damage, and these Femur Warriors with great weapons seem to be the response. Armor Sundering, magical damage, so they'll be able to take care of the Green Knight and provide support to non-armor piercing units nearby as well. So we've got a bit of a pile going on here, a bit of a dog pile. I've got these Femur Warriors with great weapons coming in. I've got this unit of Femur Warrior with great weapons as well nearby, able to dive in while Wulfrik is trying to push in. I pop Foe Seeker. I also use Stand or Die just to try and reinforce these guys' morale, keep them fighting, and get their melee defense up as well, just to make sure they don't fall apart as easily under the onslaught of the Green Knight. Meanwhile, you'll see the left flank is completely taken care of, more or less. I have taken a decent amount of hurt here, but all in all, the Knights of the Realm are in no position to get involved anymore. The Knights Errant are beginning to shatter and leave the field. The peasant mob, of course, are all falling apart. They're all leaving the field. They didn't really stand a chance, but now it's all just a matter of shutting these guys down. You'll see I've got these Norscan Warhounds chasing these guys just to make sure these routes turn to shatters, because I don't want them returning to the field later on and actually causing some damage. Meanwhile, I do need to get a little bit better and sending these Marauder Champions rather back into the fray, but right now I'm focusing on the Green Knight. You'll see I do hit him with the Hunter of Champions again, dropping his melee defense down to 0, reducing his speed, and with that and the Armor Sundering, his armor is right down to 0, so everything nearby, including these Marauder Berserkers in Berserk mode, are able to get damage done. So I'm pretty happy with the overall situation there, and you'll see Wulfrik over here keeps his distance for a little while, trying to shield this area from enemy cavalry engagements, just so that I'm not tossed around, and you'll see the Green Knight is falling apart pretty quickly as well, dropping to about half health in very little time. Of course, with Hunter of Champions, a lot of help coming in from Wulfrik naturally, but you'll see, despite that rear charge coming in from the Grail Knights, these Femur Warriors are able to kind of hold them at bay, so none of these Marauder Berserkers get thrown around, and that Green Knight is falling apart very quickly. Meanwhile, off in the distance, these Norscan Warhounds continue to give chase to these various units to shut them down once and for all, while all the way over here, these Marauder Berserkers were sent to shut these Peasant Bowmen with their fire arrows down, as they were harassing me from a distance, so I hadn't managed to shut them down earlier. Meanwhile, Wulfrik does get to finish Hélène Mercier off. You'll see a couple of hits there. She is just a spellcaster, so not able to stick around in melee, but I do have the Femur Warriors just to make quicker work of her, just to make sure she's not around for too long, while these Grail Knights over here get a nice charge into my Marauder Champions, but they're able to respond, get a decent amount of hurt in of their own, while I have just a handful of Femur Warriors with their great weapons sort of clobbering away at the Green Knight to take care of him. You'll see he's not done a lot of damage. Just 16 kills, despite the sheer volume of units he could engage with. Just 16 kills as these Femur Warrior with great weapons deal with him without much issue. I also have the Grail Reliquae under sort of a bit of focus fire between the Marauder Berserkers and the other Femur Warriors with great weapons. Wulfrik the Wanderer comes in to get involved. He does want to try and kill the Green Knight as well. That would be a great trophy for his mantle, but unfortunately it is a Femur Warrior who gets the last hit. I don't know if Wulfrik is the type to steal credit, but he definitely provided a lot of assistance. So you'll see the bulk of Bretonnian forces has been taken care of. The Green Knight, a Bretonnian Lord, and a Bretonnian Spellcaster, not really an issue with well-managed Femur Warrior with great weapons and Marauder Spearmen, but there is still this last infantry contingent back here. These guys really should, I mean, somebody here needs to be made into a knight. That's some confidence This is a lot of confidence to stay on the field despite what you saw happen. The Green Knight just fell in front of your very eyes, but these guys are willing to stick around and fight. Meanwhile, you'll see just a little bit of cleanup duty in the forest here, sending these Marauder Horsemen out into melee once again. This time they're actually out of ammunition though, but sending them into melee just to shut everything down, get them all to shatter so I can focus down here. And for some reason, I was extremely cautious in my approach here, so I'm going to skip forward to the fastest speed notch and allow these Bretonnian soldiers to get into position while I actually try and form a bit of a, I guess, blockade, a little bit of a semicircle going on over here, and a very careful approach. I guess I'm concerned that with such low health on some of these units, they might actually begin to break pretty easily because of the men-at-arms with polearms in there and some of these units with shields. I was a little overly cautious, you know how I am, switching between overly cautious and completely impatient, and you'll see that happen in just a moment's time. Again, just slowly creeping forward, getting ever closer, and then deciding, I don't think I've made that decision yet, but gradually, slowly, there you have it, deciding that, you know what, it's time for these Bretonnians to die. No one here should be a knight, they should all be dead instead. So just pushing in for some of these charges. Again, it's not going to be an issue. Wulfrik, unfortunately, gets a little caught up there, a little caught up there, using Foe Seeker to try and close the gap because I want to get one more cast of Seafang. I want Seafang involved in this glorious victory as well, but unfortunately he's a little bogged down over there. But these Fimir Warrior with great weapons pushing, getting a lot of hurt done. You'll see these men-at-arms with shields are a non-issue. I try to avoid the men-at-arms with polearms, but it's of course a little difficult. And here comes Seafang once again in all her glory, pushing in. I have a decent clump here, so you'll see Wulfrik the Wanderer starts with 55 kills before Seafang makes her appearance, and there you have it. Seafang is on the field, plowing through these men-at-arms, whether it's with polearms or shields, whatever it might be, and actually getting a decent amount of hurt this time. Pretty happy with that cast. A glorious wind spell, I have to say. I'm very happy with Seafang and how much damage she puts out. And you'll see Wulfrik the Wanderer now, as Seafang crosses that line, Wulfrik the Wanderer is at 130 kills, so pretty happy with that cast over there. And at that point, you'll see, even though I did a little bit of damage to myself, I think causing the Fimir Warriors to start to waver a little bit there, but ultimately, that is what causes enough damage to send these guys into shatter. You'll see these guys are beginning to rout already. We do have these men-at-arms with polearms getting a little adventurous over here, but Wulfrik the Wanderer does close them down alongside these Berserkers and Marauder Champions, sending these guys in, again, for a full clump. A lot of damage done. That just trickles further and further into more morale damage, and as I'm piling into these Bretonnians, sending these Marauder Horsemen with their throwing axes into melee once more, just trying to shut down their escape. You'll see these guys are on a full rout. They're not willing to fight anymore. Nothing for the lady over here. Everything for Wulfrik the Wanderer and the Chaos Gods. A wonderful quest battle. Very happy with it. It's a very exciting battle, and at the end of the day, Wulfrik wins a Pyrrhic victory. So, overall, it was all about keeping those troops in reserve. I think having my Fimir Warriors with great weapons and Marauder Spearmen back there, able to respond to when the cavalry arrived, was very important. I am extremely happy with how the Fimir Warrior with great weapons performed. Very quickly shut down a Bretonnian Lord as well as the Green Knight. Of course, Wulfrik the Wanderer was very helpful as well. Seafang is an absolutely gorgeous ability, and it does a lot of work, so I'm very happy to see Seafang sort of on the field, getting a lot of work done as well. As always, guys, thank you very much for watching. For more Total War content, make sure you subscribe to this channel, and keep sending in those battle replays as well for Total Breakdown. If you've got any Norsca content, make sure to send it over my way so we can get some nice Norsca or Wintertooth battles going. Apart from that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.